If you are risk avert, you will never be able to do anything, because you will see a risk in every hooks and cranny that you are going to explore. So no, I don't feel that that's the right attitude. Being risk avert is going to stop you from growing.
Welcome to the Business Narrative. It's me, Wajiha Nadeem. Today our guest is Alberto Manzo. So Alberto, how are you?
Hey, thank you, Majin. I'm very well, thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company?
Of course, yes. So as you said earlier, my name is Alberto. My surname is Manzo. As you can hear from the name itself, I'm from Italian origin. I was born in Italy, and when I was pretty young, I should say about in my teenage years, I moved over to the UK. And that's where I spent the majority of my life until I decided to move over to Qatar, which is the place where we're holding this podcast from. And I was very happy to have moved over to the UK when I was young enough to be able to learn different cultures and different ways of living, moving away from the comfort zone of my home. And it was very nice because I went to university in the UK as well. I experienced a different type of environment and culture compared to where I was actually grew up in. I moved over to Qatar in 2011, and I was called here to support the country opening the new airport, which is Hamad International Airport. And after that, and this is under Qatar Airways, and after six and a half years working for them, I decided to switch over to another government organization called Qatar Post. And this is the postal administration of the country. And whilst the word post doesn't excite a lot of people, I actually thought that this was a very interesting job because it was a transformational job that I was going into. And my role was very much one of changing the way the company operated and looked and felt for the consumers. And there I spent another 6 years delivering some great results together with the rest of the team. And then from January 2023, after the World Cup, I decided to launch my niche management consulting firm called Impact Consulting. Impact Consulting is dedicated to SMEs and even larger organizations, supporting them to achieve better and wonderful results. So in Impact Consulting, we focus on a variety of pillars, from commercial to operations, to strategy, to training, to organizational development, and even business coaching. And we support SMEs in all of these different areas, depending on the customer's requirements and customer needs. So that's very briefly a little history about myself and Impact Consulting.
Like, as everyone has different definition of happiness. Like for me, my definition of happiness is like to see my loved ones happy. So, like, as you are a happiness coach, so how do you define happiness?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a lovely question, actually, because I went into happiness coaching because I love not so much being happy in terms of being exuberant, but actually being happy internally. Okay, so happiness for me, it's an internal matter. So it's not about external or environmental. It's not about money. It's not about which city or which country you live in, but it's something that is born internally. So when we talk about happiness, we need to be looking at the individual and ourselves and explore ourselves internally, introspectively. And a lot of it, as you know, comes from childhood and comes from our upbringing. Okay, but also there's an element of nurture, which is the environment in which we live in, that makes us happy or less happy. But as you said, happiness means different things to different people. So what do we need to become happier? So one of the things that quite rightly you said is about helping other people. Okay, so that's very, very important in making yourself happy, is to help others. And also it's about connecting with a community. So happier people are those who are more connected with their community, and which means that people that are less happy are those that live in isolation. So one of the aspects that we always talk about when I have conversations with individuals about happiness, and I do my happiness coaching sessions, is really about what do you define as happiness? What are the main moments when you could say that you were at your happiest? Because I want to understand what happiness means for them, because as I said, it's different from different people. And then, I want to understand a bit more about how people are connected with the rest of their community and society. And finally, I want to understand a little bit more about, their health and their personal satisfaction, with slightly more material things, because also happiness comes a little bit from being secure in your own financial status as well. So maybe 10% on the financial side of things, and 90% about connectivity with the rest of the community, and exploring a little bit about your history and your past to understand what exactly we can operate to make you feel a little bit happier.
We all have that moment in our life that changes whole perspective. So do you have any that defining moment in your life that changes you so far?
Well, look, defining moments are exactly those moments that really pivot your life in a completely different direction if you had not taken that decision. So the defining moments in terms of decision making, really, really important for me. A couple of these events have happened. First one, decisive moment when I left my own country, which was Italy, and I moved over to the UK. That was a very, very important defining moment. I was only a teenager at the time. And during this period of time, I was in my, very much in my, I was a sponge in terms of, like every other teenager is, in terms of understanding their environments, understanding the culture in which they're in. So that was a very important defining moment. From that point onwards, my life took a completely different direction. My university happened to be in the UK rather than in Italy. I found my friendships, and I founded my home in the UK. The second the defining moment was the time when I actually left the UK some 13 years ago, and I moved over to Qatar as well. So that defining moment allowed me to explore again in the Middle East culture, to immerse myself in the multitude and the diversity that happens to be here in the Middle East, and to deliver some amazing results on behalf of the companies I worked for.
What's the most unusual job you have ever had?
Well, when I was in the UK, I decided to, when I was in between jobs and I was studying at the same time, I decided to work for a company that developed photographs. It's a company called Bonus Print, and I'm not sure if they exist still so many years later. And this company was proud of developing prints, with the negatives. Those days we used to use negatives. We didn't used to have the digital formats as we do these days. So customers used to come in with their films, and me and the rest of the team would develop them within an hour. Now, this company called Bonus Print allowed me to, because I was very passionate, still am passionate about photography. So I was able to develop my own photographs, and because I was a student at the time with a little budget, they would be developed for free. They would be amazing, and also I had an opportunity to learn a lot about how to deal with people, with customers, customer facing, happy customers, unhappy customers, and so on. So there was quite a different type of job that I had when I was younger.
Oh, by the way, it was your first job?
To be honest with you, we go back now to something like, I think, 1988, 1989. I was just about to start university, my first degree. And you probably could consider it as one of my very first jobs. When I was in Italy, I used to work in between college years. During the summer, I used to work in bars and restaurants and pizzerias and stuff like that. Those were also very interesting years. When I when I was trying to earn some money between the end of the school year or college year and the beginning of the new one.
It's often said that like over 60% of people shows resistance when changes are like introduced within an organization. So, do you ever face these kinds of behavior or resistance in your career? And if yes, how to deal with these kinds of things?
Yeah, always. I mean, change. Look, change is the only constant. There's nothing else about life but change. So, in a way, it's interesting that a lot of people can find it difficult to adapt to change. We are creatures of habits, right? So we do what we normally do. We like comfort, we like routines, and change is something inevitable, but at the same time something that we shy away from. So in the world of business, this is privately, but also in the world of business, when we go and introduce a new change, we're going to introduce a new policy, a new procedure, we pivot the organization to a different type of product than we are used to. People find it difficult sometimes to believe in it, to come along with you. So, change needs to be supported. In leadership, one of our major activities and one major responsibilities that we have is to support people through change. And how do we do that? We do that through, first of all, communication. We need to make sure that we communicate clearly and often and consistently with people. And that's number one. Number two, we need to be able to show listening skills, because once you've communicated, you've also got to be able to listen carefully about what people feel, what people tell you about what you're trying to do. And finally, we need to be able to be empathetic, and we need to apply quite a big dose of emotional intelligence, because we need to put ourselves in the shoes of those that are undergoing that change. Why? Because, we need to explain to people what's in it for me, right? What's in it for me is very important when we take people through change. People need to understand what are they to gain from this change. And we need to be doing that through communication, through listening, through empathy and emotional intelligence.
As you have mentioned, you were doing a job before starting your own business. What was the point you thought that just take a risk and start your own business?
So yeah, I mean, I decided to leave corporate life. I've always been a corporate person. I've always dedicated myself 100% to organizations I worked for. I've always considered my jobs as missions. However, just recently, I decided to leave corporate life and dedicated my next few years of my career to supporting organizations to do better and to achieve better results and fly higher than they have been doing. And the reason why I did that, number one, is because my stage of my life allows me the luxury, if you like, to be a bit more flexible. And secondly, because I really enjoy supporting organizations going through change and supporting them to improve what they are doing. So for me, it was a question of I'm okay at this point in my life. I can actually live corporate life, and B, I love supporting organizations, not just one, but a multitude of organizations. So that's what kind of inspired me to leave corporate life and go solo, if you like, into a business venture as an entrepreneur.
Like, as I believe, like there's a quite difference between an employer and an employee. So, do you feel any key difference between these two?
The key difference that I noticed is that when you're an entrepreneur, I'm afraid you're on your own. So whereas when you work in a company, you are surrounded by colleagues, you're surrounded by some sort of safety net. When you are working on your own, you feel that the whole world is on your shoulders. So you've got to really be an optimist to be able to navigate through the moments of difficulties and challenges that you find as an entrepreneur, and you've got to really adapt to this new way of life, which is no longer a corporate life. You're not surrounded by people that are your direct reports or people that are your superiors. You are completely on your own. So this is something that is the major difference between working in a corporate and working on your own.
The other way, as well, like fascinates you about like traveling. So, what fascinates you more about traveling?
Look, traveling for me is a way to, first of all, to learn. Okay, so traveling allows you to learn about different people, to learn about different cultures, to put yourself in the shoes of people that have a completely different um, territory in which they operate, different circumstances, different situations, even different weathers. So for me, traveling is about understanding people. And this is what fascinates me about traveling, because you can just go from here to Europe and speak a different language. You can go to India and immerse yourself in the flavors of your cuisine, in the smell of your lovely spices. So it's amazingly interesting for me to be able to immerse myself into other people's cultures, and doing so and learning from it. And often I don't just like to spend a week or two in a place, because that becomes, that keeps you as a tourist. I love to spend, a longer time there, so that I can actually understand more about, how people really live, and see the society there, not as a tourist, but as almost as a resident, if you see what I mean.
What's your favorite destination?
Oh, my favorite destination. I've got a few, to be honest. So I love New York. So this is a place where I often go to. So I know New York. It's a familiar place for me. So I don't consider it as traveling per se, because I know the city, I know the whereabouts and so on. So I move quite freely and confidently within it. So in terms of big cities, I like New York for sure. I come from London, and that's also a beautiful place. But I what I love the most is when I actually go to places that are not familiar to me.
If I want to start a business, what are the key principles I should keep in mind before selecting a niche?
Well, that's a really good point. So very important to consider cultural differences, right? Cultural differences are really, really important, because it's consumer behavior. It's about business practices that are not necessarily what you're used to. Okay, so if you as a potential Indian national would come and operate and start up a business in Qatar or in Europe, looking at the consumer behavior are different from the ones that you're used to. Looking at the business practices are completely different. So cultural differences. Number two, market research and analysis. Conducting thorough market research to understand the target market needs, the preferences, and the competition is absolutely crucial. Number three, regulatory and legal barriers. Really, really important to understand the regulations in that particular country, in that particular industry, the legal barriers that you might encounter. So navigating different regulatory environments, legal requirements, compliance issues, and can be very complex and time consuming. So be very careful from that perspective. Number four, resources. So you would need to have people, you will need to have, and these are resources, human resources, you will need to have material resources. So expanding into a new market requires significant investment in terms of time, money, and human resources. Finally, establishing a brand recognition and a trust, building a brand awareness, really, really important. The trust in the new market takes time and effort. It can be challenging to attract and retain new customers, especially in markets with established competitors. So you've got to be very careful about your business model canvas when you start up a new organizations, and you can base yourself on these kind of 5 principles that I've just listed.
Like as there is a dynamic situation in the like business world, so is it good to be risk averse or risk taker?
Well, it's a very personal point of view, right? In my opinion, if you are risk avert, you will never be able to do anything, because you will see a risk in every hooks and cranny that you are going to explore. So no, I don't feel that that's the right attitude. Being risk avert is going to stop you from growing. Whereas if you have an attitude to risk that is slightly more conducive to taking the plunge, doing something that you're not familiar with. It's a much better sort of avenue to choose than to just have a can't do attitude or risk avert attitude. But I think the short of it is, if you have a balanced approach between being risk avert and prone to risk, then I think that's probably safer for most people.
Okay, let's play a rapid fire round. You have to select only one option: coffee or tea,
Coffee.
early bird or night owl,
Early bird for sure, but also some people would say both.
favorite app on your phone,
Is LinkedIn.
favorite business book.
Good to Great, Jim Collins.
Nice. What's your hidden talent?
I play guitar.
That's nice. Okay, what's an unconventional approach you have taken that paid off?
Well, unconventional approach is a very good question. Being a business person, being a life coach and a happiness coach, what I have tried to do, I've tried to combine the two together. And one business approach, let's say lean and Six Sigma, which is about optimization of what people do in business, and taking that and couple it with the coaching aspect. That's kind of like unconventional because it's coming from an emotional perspective, but also from a rational perspective. So these two combined allowed me to make people feel happy in the workplace, but at the same time, allow them and enable them to produce optimized processes and procedures for their own benefit and the benefit of the consumers.
Like, as you have a global experience, so from your point of view, what are the top 5 common problem businesses face when they're trying to develop new or expanding their markets globally?
I mean, I mentioned it earlier in terms of looking at the cultural differences, the market research, the regulatory and legal barriers, the resources, the establishment of a brand recognition. So these are some of the common problems that businesses face when trying to develop new and expanding markets.
Thank you so much for your time. It's all from my side. Take care.
And likewise, thank you for having me on the line. Thank you so much. Take care.
You're